This conference will now be recorded.
Need to go on mute. Thank you. Thank you. Just give me a minute to start. Okay. So, any questions you have? Anything on whatever we discussed in our earlier topics? Okay, I'll take it as no. Right. So we were discussing about the storage accounts. Within that storage account, what we discussed the other day is we discussed different types of blobs. Right. We had also discussed queues and tables, and we discussed about Storage Explorer. Right. We discussed about storage. Right. Now, in continuation with that, within the storage account, you have something called as file shares. File shares. Now, today we'll look into the file shares, and we'll also try to look into something called as file sync service, which is another important service when it comes to the file shares and other stuff. Okay, so these are the two topics that which we are going to cover today. Right. So, what is a file share? A file share is a location where you go and dump your data, right? It could be files or folders which users will access based on the permissions that what they have, correct? So similarly, you have something within the Azure where you can go and create a file share, right? Now, what is the advantage that which I get when I go and create a file share on Azure versus whatever we have on, whatever we create or whatever the way we create on on-prem, right? So in on-prem, if you create a file share, what you do is you have a physical server. On top of it, you have OS, right? On top of the OS, then you go and install your file service, right? You go and install your file service. This is how it will be, right? On top of this, you go and install your file service. Now, so whenever you need, whenever you want to provision or something, you have to do all this setup, right? So you have to first get your physical server, or it might also be a virtual server if it's an ESXi environment, correct? Now then you go and install the file services on top of it. Then install OS and then you install the file services. It could be any operating system for that matter, right? And then you create folders and files within that, and users will start using it, right? And share it, and users will use it. That's how it will be. Now, if this physical server or the virtual server, whatever on which even if it is a virtual server, it will sit on some physical server, right? So if there is any downtime, then your file server is not accessible, right? So that is one disadvantage that we have here. That is one disadvantage. Now, the other disadvantage when you go with your traditional model is if you need an additional space, right? So if you need an additional space on this machine, you need to go and increase your disk capacity, right? You need to go and increase your disk capacity by adding additional disk. Now, if there is a feasibility or possibility of increasing the space, then you will go and do it. But let us say that you reach to a point where you can no longer, what do you call it, as increase the space on the server. Then what will happen? You will get into a situation where you may have to go and spin another machine, right, or move this machine to another physical server where it supports the required hardware or whatever, right? Is another disadvantage that which you get. Now, what Azure provides you is Azure provides a file share which you can go and readily use it. Which means you just need to go log into the your subscription and then just allocate the space, and then you go and straight away use it. And you are not bothered about what storage it is sitting, whether it is on top of operating system or is just an NAS device or whatever, but you just go and use those services, right? And whenever there is a need, you can go and directly expand it, right? There is no limitation. It is scalable, right? It is scalable up to the extent that whatever you want, right? Whenever you don't want, you can decrease it, right? Based on your requirement, you can go and use this space on the cloud. So if you are using a cloud file share or Azure file share, what are the advantages? You are avoiding the dependency on your operating system or physical server. You are avoiding the dependency on storage expansion, which means that if there are any limitations within a hardware, then you cannot go beyond certain limit, right? That limit is overruled when you go and use your cloud services file share, right? And the other one is a cost perspective, right? The cost is also very less than compared to the management of the OS and physical hardware and so on. You can go and use it with a very less cost. So these are the advantages that which you get when you go with your file share on cloud. Okay, so let us quickly go and see how do we create a file share, right? So we have to go to our storage account, right? And within the storage accounts, you create a storage account with some name. Let me go and create a storage account. Let us name it as let us create a resource group demo G, and then I'll go and create a storage account. Let me name it as demo storage account. Right, then select the region. I'll select Central US, and within this you can go and select your select your account type. I will leave that as a default account, and then I'll create the storage account. Now within this storage account, you can go and create a file share, right? We had seen that yesterday also. Go and do it. Once this is created, create a file share, right? Let that get provisioned. Right, let that get created. Then once the storage account is created, you can go with your file share creation. Right, now you see your demo storage account created. We'll go and quickly create a file share within this storage account, right? So we have four services. We had seen that queues, blobs, right, tables, and files, right? So we'll use files to create our file share. See, you can see files, file shares that use a standard SMB 3.0 protocol, right? SMB is a server message block. It's a protocol used to access the file shares. It's a Windows file share protocol, right? Now, how do I create a file share? Go and click on file share, right? It will ask you a file share name. Let us say that project A file share, right? The project. And what is the space that which you want to allocate, right? Is it 10 GB, 1 GB, 1 TB or what, right? So you can go and allocate some space, right? So here it says you can allocate up to 5120 GB, which is very huge, right? So based on your requirement, you can go and allocate the space that whatever you want. So for this testing, I'll go and allocate 5 GB of space. Okay, go and create the file, right? Now you created a file share. Then how does user access this file share, right? How does user access this file share, right? Go to the file share itself, right? You see here an option called connect, right? Upload, create directory, and so on. You can increase the quota. If you have snapshots, you can take snapshots if you want. That means the backup of the data and so on, right? Now let us try to create a directory. Let us say that test directory, and in that you can go and straight away upload a file if you want, right? You can go ahead and upload a file. From here, from the portal itself, you can upload it. You can also use some PowerShell commands to upload file as well, right? You can go and upload this file, right? Now, let us say that this is a file share you have, and you want your users to access this file share, right? Now, how does my users access this file share? Go to the file share itself. Then you see an option here called connect, right? Here you see an option called connect. If you click on connect, what you see is it will give you some commands which you can use and map your drive. Now this share, if you want to map it as a Z drive, you can go and select the drive letter as Z, and it will give you either PowerShell commands to map the drive, or you can also use a Windows command line. Either way. Now if you are on a Linux machine, you will get a Linux command, right? Or if you are on Macintosh, then you will also get Mac command line. So what it is giving you is, it is giving you a way to go and map your file share as a network drive, map drive, right? Now based on your requirement, you can go and select whatever the network drive you want, right? Let us say that I want to go and map this particular drive as a P drive on my machine, right? Let me go and put this on a notepad. Now all I need to go is I need to run these commands as an administrator, right? Let me copy this, go to one of the machines that I have, go to the command prompt, run as an administrator, and then just execute those commands. The first command, if you please observe it, it has got a code, right? If you see it, what is this? This is a SAS key, right? Server access, secure access key, right? We had discussed SAS key, that whatever we discussed, that is the one here, right? Let us go and add it. Now it has added the credential. Now the second step that what you need to do is you need to go and map this file. Right? So it uses net use command, which basically mapping this shared drive as a C drive, right? This is completed. Let me see if this is mapped as a C drive, a P drive, sorry, right? Let's go to the P colon. You can see if you go to the dir, you can see the test directory. Go to the test director. Again, if you see the file that which you uploaded, which is test.txt, right? You can also create a directory from here, right? You can add some files, right? Right? If you want, you can add a file. Of course, you can do it through the browser also. Go and put dir. You can see a new directory called Vijay created. Within that, you'll have. Okay, so the file is not yet created. That's fine. So what we are doing here is we are trying to access this file as a map drive, and you can upload and download data to this map drive as per your requirement. Okay, so you can upload and download the data as per your requirement. Now, how is this authentication happening? I mean, I haven't given any permissions to anybody on this specific drive, right? I haven't given any permissions to anybody. So the way how we are accessing this is using the SAS key, right? This is the key that you have, right? So using this key helps you to map your, what you call it as, map this particular share, as a drive or a network drive, right? Likewise, you can go and create your file shares based on your requirement and map those drives to certain map drives and use them, right? So this is about the file share. So any questions you have, we can take before we move to the next topic. Okay, so I'll say it as no questions. Then we'll move ahead with the next topic. Okay, so the next topic that what we are going to see is again something around the file share itself, which is called as Azure File Sync. Okay, this is called as Azure File Sync. Azure File. Now this is a very small topic, but it will take 30 minutes or 35 minutes to complete the lab. Hopefully we should be able to complete by the end of the by 8 o'clock. Okay. Now, what is this file sync? File sync is a synchronization solution. With a file synchronization solution, what it means is, let us say that you have a server on-prem. Let us say that you have an on-prem server, right? With the file server. Let us say that is a file server. File server. And what you want to have is, you want to make sure that the replica of the same files data on this file server should be stored on some other place, right? Replica of the data should be stored on cloud. Let us say that that's the scenario. You want to have a disaster recovery solution, and as a part of this DR solution, all the data that whatever you have on your file server should be replicated to a file share on Azure cloud. Now you already have a file share solution. So right, what you need to do is, you need to use a service called as file sync service. What it does basically is, it goes and replicates your data on the your what you call it as data on prem to your cloud file. Your cloud goes and now to create this solution, what is that you need? You need a storage file share. You need a storage account. And within this storage account, what you need to do is, you need to create a file share. This is on Azure file. This is on Azure. Now you have a file share, but you need to synchronize, right? To synchronize this, you use a service called as file sync. This is another service which we have in Azure. So when you configure a file sync, so you will create an endpoint. Create a endpoint. So when we talk about endpoints, there are two endpoints, right? There are two endpoints, right? Now what are these two endpoints? One endpoint is your on-prem file server. The other endpoint is your, what do you call it as, cloud file share, right? So you have an endpoint here on the cloud, You have an endpoint here on file. So you create two endpoints, and you define what are those, what is the data between these two endpoints that should be synced, right? What is the data between these two endpoints that needs to be synced? Now, to create two endpoints, one is on the cloud itself, where your file sync service will be able to go and identify because it is a file share on your storage account. The other endpoint is on your file server, which is on-prem. For this, you need to install an agent here. You need to install agent. And what is that agent? File sync agent. You need to install an agent called file sync agent. So when you install this agent, what will happen is it will go and talk to your, authenticate to your file sync service and registers that server as a server endpoint. So you need two endpoints. One is the cloud endpoint. The other one is server endpoint. Okay. So let us say that you also want to replicate this data to some other server. Want to replicate this data to other server in a different region. So all you need to do is create one more endpoint, server endpoint, and point it to this file share, right? Or cloud endpoint, whatever you call it. So if you have a file here, and this file gets synchronized here, which in turn gets synchronized here. So if you have any file that which is created on your file server FS, if it automatically replicates it to your file share, which is on your cloud, and which in turn replicates to your another file server in a different region. Right? Now this is how you can use your file sync service. So you can use that as a disaster recovery solution. You can also use that as a replication solution across different geographical locations. If you have file servers, right? So if you have file servers, you can use that as a replication between the file servers through the cloud, right? These two file servers are not talking to each other directly, but they are talking to each other through your file sync service on the cloud, right? Now, if you are a Windows guy, and if you if you have some Windows knowledge, you have a solution called as DFS within Windows. You have a solution called as DFS, right? Distributed file service, right? DFS does the same thing what you see here. So what it does, it basically synchronizes the data across multiple servers within different geographical locations. The same solution here, but it is over the cloud, right? So this is how you can synchronize the data between on-prem and your cloud service, right? Using cloud service, on-prem and your file share, you can synchronize the data. Let us quickly go and see how do we do that. Okay, let us quickly go and see how do we do that. The first and foremost thing what we need is we need a storage account, we need a file share, right? Now we had already created a storage account which is called as demo storage, right? Within this demo storage, we'll go and create a file share. Let us name that file share as file sync file share for our identification purpose. Let us create a file share. Right? Click on file share. Let us say sync. Right? I'll give some 5 GB of space, or 3 GB should also be fine. Right? Now I have a file share on a storage account. The next step that what I need to use this is I need to go and have something called as file sync service installed, right? So how can I find it? Go to all resources, right? You can go and add, right? You can search it here, right? You will see file sync, Azure file sync service, right? You see Azure file sync service. If you read it, Azure file sync service extends on-premise file servers into Azure, providing cloud benefits while maintaining the performance and compatibility. Now, what does it provide? Multi-site access, provide read access to the same data across the Windows servers. Cloud tiering we'll see. It integrates with your backup. You can take the backup also, and it's a faster disaster recovery, right? Now, what you see, if you look at this diagram, you have your file servers, and these file servers are shared. You have Azure file share on your what you call it as cloud, and using this file sync service, you are what you call it, you are synchronizing your data, which in turn synchronizes to another server on a different location, right? And you also take the backup of this file share on the Azure itself using Azure Backup Vault, right? Which we'll be seeing in our how to take the backup and other stuff we'll see in our backup class, but you can also have integrate your backup solution, right? That's what your Azure file sync will do. Let us go and create. Let's create a file sync. Right? Select the resource group. I'll select the resource group which we have already created, which is demo resource group. And it will ask you the name. Let us say that demo sync. Okay, let us name it as demo sync. Right, this is the storage sync name, sync service name. Now, what is the region? You need to make sure that you are selecting the right region wherever your file is, right? Then review and create. Now, what it does is it creates a file sync for your file sync service, which you can go and use for your file sync service. Now, so far what we did is we created a file share account, storage account, and file share, and then we installed the file sync service. Right, this is what we did so far. Right, let us go to the file sync which we created, the file sync service, and if you look into it, we have an option here called as sync group. Right, so the next step what you will be doing is creation of the sync group. Right, create a sync group. So when you create a sync group, that sync group will have the endpoints, right? A sync group will have an endpoint. Let us go and create a sync group, right? Name it as demo sync group. Right? Demo sync group. And here you are tagging a storage account, right? Here you are tagging a storage account. What does it mean? You are adding a first cloud endpoint. As I said, there could be more than one endpoint, but one endpoint is definitely on the cloud. The other endpoints might be multiple, which are nothing but your server endpoints. So the first endpoint is nothing but my file share on my storage account, correct? Where my data should go and synchronize. Now for that, I need to go and select my storage account because I have multiple storage accounts. I need to select the right storage account, right? Let me go and select the storage account. Right? You have two storage accounts. I'll select my demo storage account. Once I select the demo storage account, within that storage account, it will show you the file shares that what you have. Right? Now the file share that what I am going to go and use is file sync fs is the file share that which we created. Now what you did now is you created a file sync service and you created a group, file sync group, and then you tagged your first endpoint to your file sync group, which is nothing but your storage account. Okay, so that's what we are doing. Go and create. Now you have your file sync service pointing to your storage on the cloud, right? You have your file sync server configured to your storage on the cloud. Now this part is done. This part, right? This part is done. Now you need to configure your on-premises service or on-premises server to point to your file sync service, right? That's what we have to do as a part of next step. Right? If I click on this file sync group which got created, right? You see cloud endpoints. It is pointed to your file share. But if you look at this option, add cloud endpoint, here it is grayed out. Add cloud endpoint is grayed out. What it means is for a single file sync or for one file sync server, you can have only one cloud endpoint. Okay, so you cannot have multiple cloud endpoints. You can have only one cloud endpoint, but you can have multiple server endpoints, right? Because we haven't configured any servers, it is showing it as 0 here, right? Server endpoint, it is showing it as 0, right? Now to add the server endpoint, as I said, your file server needs a file sync agent, right? Your file server needs a file sync agent. Let us go and see how do we install the file sync agent. Okay, now before we go and look at this file sync agent, on the file server there are few prerequisites. With the Windows server there are few prerequisites. It should be Windows 2012 or later. Right? Your PowerShell version should be PowerShell version should be 5.1 or later. This is another requirement. And the third requirement is disable Internet Explorer enhanced security. Right? And then install your agent. These are the steps, right? So we need to validate all these things to make sure that whatever we are doing, it is working fine. So for that you need all these things, right? The first thing is Windows 2012 or later, operating system 5.1 version, and then disable Internet enhanced security, Internet Explorer enhanced security, and then install the agent, whatever you need, file sync agent, right? Now for this demo purpose, I went and created a machine on Google Cloud. You can see the file server I created, which we will be using as a file share, right? So that's the one which we are going to use, right? I had already logged into this file share, right, with my administrator account. So all we need to know is we need to go and check for the prerequisites and install the required agent, so that this particular server will be added as a server endpoint to your file sync service. Okay, so let us go and do it. So first thing is I need to go and check whether I have a PowerShell latest version or not. Another important thing I missed there is we have to install what do you call it as Azure modules. Okay, so that will include it. Now how do I check the version? $PS version table, right? So you can see the version of the PowerShell is 5.1, right? You can see this here, 5.1. So we are good here, right? Now I am already on to a Windows 2012 operating system. That also fine. I need to install Azure modules. Okay, Azure Resource Manager module. So install -module. That's the command. Name of the module, right? This is a general command. Now, what is the module that which you are going to install? Azure RM Resource Manager module you will install, right? Let us say yes to go ahead and install those required modules. So these modules are needed for your synchronization. Okay, so modules are needed for your synchronization. Right. So here we have to add one more step. Them is to add install Azure RM module. Okay, so this is another step. Right. Install Azure RM modules. Taking a while to install. Right, while this installation goes on, let us go and download our file sync agent, right, which we need to install, right? So it is just go and Google it, saying that Azure file sync agent. So we have to disable the Internet Explorer enhanced settings. Let us do that. Otherwise, we'll see those pop-ups. Let's go to the local server. Disable your enhanced securities for administrator as well as users both. Okay. Right. Let us go and use Internet Explorer. Then download our Azure Sync agent. Azure file sync agent. Right. And down. Right. You can see it. That's the second one. I'll go and download the file sync agent. Click on down. Now, what version? For what version you need? As I said, it should be 2012 or later. So because I have 2012, I'll go and download my 2012 Azure file sync agent. Right. Let get download. Straight away run it. Right. Your Azure RM also is getting installed. right? So you have your Azure Resource Manager modules installed. Let us go and install our agent as well, right? So simple, straightforward. I accept the license agreement. And what features you want to install? Azure File Sync. And then if you have a proxy, you don't have direct connectivity to internet, then you can go and specify your proxy settings here. Okay. So because this is this server has direct internet access, I don't need a proxy setting here. If you are in a corporate environment, then there might be a proxy server through which your traffic might go to the internet. Those type of situations, you can go and specify your proxy details, and if required, you can authenticate to the proxy using these credentials. Okay. Because I have direct access to the internet, there is no proxy settings needed, right? So Microsoft update not needed. I'll just go and install it. Okay. Now this installs your file sync agent. So once you install this file sync agent, you need to configure this file sync agent. Now to configure this file sync agent, what you are generally doing is you are going and authenticating yourself to your cloud. That's all, right? Because you need to sync this data to your storage account on your cloud account, right? So for that, what you need to do is you need to go and authenticate yourself to your cloud account and point the synchronization to your storage account, right? Otherwise, how does it know where it has to sync, right? So let us go and do that. Right, let me close this. You can see the file sync agent is installed and it is up to date. I'll say okay. Then it will ask me some configuration, right? As I said, sign in and register the server. Sign into Azure and register with an existing storage sync service, right? I have to go and register myself. What type of cloud environment it is? Public or US government cloud? It is public cloud. Let us click on sign in. Then it will ask me the user ID and password. I'll use my Azure credentials. Right? Password. Then it authenticates with your cloud, and then it will give you the details, right? If you have multiple subscriptions, you can go and select the subscription that whatever you have. Because I have only one subscription, I'll go and select it. Now the resource group for my account, right? I created a resource group for this, specifically for this demo, so I'll go and select demo RG. Now what is the storage sync service to this this particular what do you call it as a server should talk to, right? It has to talk to a storage service which is called as storage sync service, which is called as demo sync, right? Now you go and register yourself to this. Click on register, right? So it may ask authentication second time. Let me go and enter my credentials once again. Right? Password. It should register with your file sync service. Right? So you can see registration successful. You have established a trust relation between your server and selected Azure Sync service. To manage this server and set up sync, use Azure portal or PowerShell. Okay. Now let us go back to our Azure portal. And we should be able to see this particular server within our storage group, right? Let us go to our storage group and click on the storage group. storage sync, right? Storage sync, whatever sync group, whatever you created. Now you have an option here. You added a cloud endpoint. Now what you need to do, you need to add a server endpoint, which is nothing but your file server, which you registered, and it says it automatically, it got itself registered with the file sync service, right? Demo SD in our case. How do I add that? Click on add server endpoint, select the server that which you registered, right? This is the file server which you registered, right? You go to the file server, right? This is the server that which you registered, right? And you will be able to see that particular server here. Okay, so you registered a file server, but what is the data you want to sync? What is the directory that which you want to sync, right? Let me say that I want to sync some data on the C drive itself. Let me go and create a folder here. Right, let me go and create a folder. And put the text file in there. Some text file for identification purpose. Right. Now, so what I want to sync, I want to sync a directory called C:demo sync. This is a directory. All the data part of this directory will get automatically synchronized to your file share, which is there on your storage account, which is tagged as a file sync service called as demo SD. Right. Create. Now you have an endpoint added. Now you have a cloud endpoint added, a server endpoint added. Right. Now once this endpoint addition is done, your service or your agent, whatever you have on your server, will help in the replication of the data to your file share, which is on your storage account. Right. You can see a server endpoint got created, and then the status of this is provisioning. It is not yet synchronized. It will take some time for the synchronization, right? Once the synchronization is done, you will be able to see all the files that whatever you have here on C:demo sync. You should be able to see that on your storage account, right? Your storage account, you should be able to see. And let us wait for a couple of minutes for this to synchronize. So during that time, if you have any questions, you can ask. It's a very good solution if you want to synchronize your data and have a disaster recovery in place. Then you can go with this solution of file sync, right? It might take some time. Let us go back to the one that I have. I should have one more file sync. This is a test that which I created. To go to this one, go to the sync groups, click on the sync group, right? So once the replication is done, this is how it will be, right? C::data, it got 6 files not syncing, 0, and then you have this data which is stored on your cloud endpoint, right? It's stored on my cloud endpoint. Right? Will once our what you call it as synchronization is done, we should be able to go back and look at the data as well. Right? Let us wait for a couple of minutes for the synchronization to come. Then you will be able to see the text file, whatever you created and the folder within your storage account. It means that the data from on-prem got successfully replicated to your Azure file share. Right? take some time. Let us wait, maybe 2 to 3 minutes. There is one or two more small topics which we will be discussing today. One is content delivery network (CDN), and then I think there's one more small topic. So these two will look into it tomorrow, and then we'll move on to our Active Directory, which is nothing but identity and access management, right? So where we'll be looking at Azure Active Directory AAD, and also we'll try to look at Azure Directory Services. Azure Active Directory Domain Services is another topic. So those two topics we'll cover, and so by this weekend we should be able to finish the Active Directory part as well. Maybe tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Friday we will have maybe whatever the leftover topics on networking, we'll switch back and try to complete them. Right. So that's what our plan is. Once we are done with that, then we'll go to the migrations next week, and then few small topics whichever are left over, we'll finish it. So by 6th we should be able to finish our entire curriculum next week. That's what the target date is. We'll see if there is still anything needed. We'll try to go beyond that. I'm trying to push it and finish it on 6th itself, but we'll see how things will move on, right? Okay, it is taking some time. Let me. So these things are all need little bit of practice. Otherwise, because you have multiple steps involved in this, so just make sure that you are practicing this and the networking concepts are a little extensive, right? So, right, you can see now the status of this one is changed, right? Server. Okay, server endpoints, right? You can see server endpoints of file server being registered, and the path which it syncs is demo sync, right? Now, where is this data getting synchronized? This data is getting synchronized to your cloud endpoint, right? Now, what is your cloud endpoint? Your cloud endpoint is nothing but your storage account. Within that storage account, there is a file share. That is your cloud endpoint. Let us go to that storage account, right? And look at the storage account that which you created for this particular synchronization, which is nothing but demo storage account, demo SR. Go to the files, right? This is what we created, sync fs, and this you should be able to see your files that whatever you created. You see, text file whatever is created got replicated because there is no data in that, so it is just a 0 KB file, right? 0 bytes file. Likewise, if you put whatever the data in that particular directory, it gets synchronized to your storage account, which is on cloud. Now, if you want to extend this solution, right? Now we had seen only this part and this part. Now you want to add the another file server. You go and install the endpoint. What is that? File sync endpoint, right? File sync agent on this, right? Of course, you need to make sure that all these prerequisites are met. Then you install the file sync agent. Then you go and add that server here in the server endpoint, right? Go and add that server in the server endpoint, so that whatever the data which is getting synchronized to your cloud will also get synchronized to your another file server in a different geographical location, right? Likewise, you can add multiple server endpoints. Likewise, you can add multiple server endpoints. You see it, you have still this option enabled, which means that you can add multiple server endpoints, whereas on the cloud side you can have only single endpoint. So whatever the data which is synchronizing to cloud, it will also get synchronized to other servers as well, right? Likewise, you can do it. Okay. So that's all for that's all I have for this file sync. If you have any questions, we can take. Otherwise, I think we are done for today's topic. Any questions? Okay, so I'll take it as no. We'll catch up tomorrow with another topic. Tomorrow we're going to start Azure Active Directory and then a small topic within the what do you call it as file shares itself, that which we'll be seeing, and then we'll move to Azure Active Directory. We'll try to understand how do we create a custom domain and how do we create user accounts within the Azure Active Directory, and how do we create groups. Till that point we'll look in tomorrow, and day after tomorrow we'll continue with the Azure Active Directory, and possibly we'll also see Azure Active Directory domain services. That's another topic. Maybe tomorrow and day after tomorrow, 2 days we'll finish that one. Okay. But if no questions, then I think we are done for today. We'll catch up tomorrow at the same time. Okay. Thank you guys. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.